Well, hi everyone, and welcome to our webinar on securing the IoT through automation and intelligent network. My name is Lorna Malia, and I am the marketing manager at Barcodes. Today's digital economic environment is the fastest pace of industrial development in history, and there are huge opportunities, but with that also huge risks. Businesses really need to look beyond their traditional borders to unlock new revenue streams. So today, we'll discuss the importance of securing your systems, applications, and users to ensure maximum protection, because it is essential that the network enables growth and innovation and not inhibit it. We've got lots of awesome information to share with you today, and we've got a really great lineup. We have Tom Catanese, who is the Senior System Engineer at Extreme Networks, and he'll be discussing how network automation reduces IT network administration and improves operational efficiency, how network automation helps secure company intellectual property, devices, and staff, and also how Extreme Smart Edge Solutions really accelerates the enterprise digital transformation with an intelligent, adaptable, and secure solution that will provide a consistent customer-driven experience. And then we've also got John Valentine, who is the Regional Engineering Manager at Extreme Networks, and he'll be here today to answer any questions during our Q&A at the very end. We do just want to remind everybody that we have a chat feature available on this webinar, so please feel free to ask any questions and we'll answer them during the Q&A. After the Q&A, I will announce the winner of the $25 Amazon gift card. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Tom.
Great. Thank you very much, Lorna. Again, my name is Tom Catanese. I'm with Extreme Networks. I've been here for roughly almost 11 years now, and we're actually going to spend a little time here talking about IoT, or Internet of Things, how we sort of view the IoT devices accessing the network, and sort of some of the features and functions that we have pertaining to how we're going to associate those devices to our network, leveraging our smart OmniEdge solution and our automated campus. So 5 to 10 years ago, we saw a big explosion with wireless devices. And it used to be a nice to have feature, but now we're starting to see that it's a must have feature. We're starting to see the idea that there's potentially another 25 billion more devices that will be accessing the network in about 2021, 2022. And then we're also starting to recognize that up to 75% of those devices will also be connected to the wireless local area network, or the wireless LANs that we have with our customer base today, which means that the wireless network has to be much more pervasive today than it will ever will need to be. With that risk, we're also looking at potential attacks on the network. As there's 25 billion more devices that are accessing the network, there's 25 potential billion more access to attacks or for threats, which also means that we have to look at how we onboard those wireless devices, and we're starting to see about a 50% growth rate in discovery, provisioning, and authenticating those IoT devices on the network in all verticals. So we're recognizing healthcare is a big boom for us right now. We're starting to see that K-12, higher ed, all of our verticals are starting to recognize the need for how we support IoT devices as they're accessing the network. So an interesting insight, we start to look at some of the CIO insights. There's 4 specific things that they're looking at. Growth of in market share is growing at 26%. Digital business or digital transformation is what they're looking at, about 17%, how they're supporting their customers with digital transformation. They're also looking at profit improvements and innovation and new products, which is a departure, I think, from what CIOs were typically looking at 5 to 10 years ago. It used to be the direction that the network's heading in, but now it's becoming more about how effective the network can be for not only them, but their partners that they leverage, or even the customers that they're trying to leverage. So 70% of CIOs are seeing network as more strategic to the business. How are they adapting their networks to support the business more effectively, not just by being able to support the employees of the network, but again, how they can effectively utilize the network to support their customers more efficiently and more effectively. So we begin to ask ourselves, how responsive is your organization to taking the business beyond its traditional borders? So how do you unlock different revenue streams by leveraging your network infrastructure? I think we can look at a couple of these and talk a little more specifically about them. Maybe look at Blockbuster, for example, and maybe we can look at Toys R Us, and maybe another one we can look at is Uber. So if you look at Blockbuster, for example, there is a Blockbuster at every corner. everybody would go to Blockbuster to rent a tape or a DVD. They would come home, they would watch the movie, and then they would potentially either the next day or the following day drop that device off, only to find out that maybe they didn't rewind the tape, or maybe it was a day late and they got charged extra for that particular video. Um, I think we can look at Toys R Us as being the big box store that you would typically go to if you wanted to purchase toys for your children, only to find out that there's little help to support you in these big box stores, and maybe they didn't have products available on their shelves, or maybe you'd have to go to a different Toys R Us store to find that specific toy that you're looking at. And I think Uber is a great example of what we're trying to see as far as where technology is heading. I think the taxi cab industry is noticing a big impact on Uber right now, coming into their backyards, and it's interesting how the network is becoming more pervasive to support these customers. So Blockbuster, for example, might say that that Netflix might have taken on their business, and maybe they did, because it's very easy for me to set up an account with Netflix, and I can search for a specific movie that I want to watch, stream it right to my desktop. I pay $7, $8 a month for the service. I can download movies. I don't have to worry about returning them. I don't have to worry about late charges. It's just a much easier thing for me to do from the standpoint of not having to get in my car and drive to a Blockbuster to rent a movie. Toys R Us the same way. Amazon is a wonderful idea of being able to search for what you want, find out where it's at, and instead of driving to the store, it will be shipped to my house in 2 days. Uber is the same way, right? So I live in Detroit, Michigan, and there's not a lot of public transportation, but often I like to go to downtown Detroit, and sometimes I want to drive. There's not a very big taxi cab population, especially where I live, but it's very easy and convenient for me to use an application on my cell or my phone and identify where I want to head to, and 4 or 5 people are there responding to my request and showing. I get to pick the vehicle I want. I see a map of where they're at with respect to where my home is, and the transaction happens quite nicely when I'm done. I just pay from the application that I ordered the service, and everything works well for us. So we start to look at the need for the network to be more responsive to the customer needs, and we start to look at how we're supposed to support those from a manufacturer standpoint, more specifically from our customer's perspective. So we start to look at how the edge of the network needs to be provisioned to support some of those activities. So with our Extreme Smart Arm the Edge solution, we have the ability to not only identify these devices that are accessing the network, we also have the ability to sort of understand what type of device it is. We also can provision that device automatically at the edge of the network to support specific rules or roles. And we have to also make certain that they're accessing the network securely. And we have to do this, by the way, understanding that it could be a cloud approach, it could be an on-prem approach, or it could be an opportunity where it's a hybrid approach where some applications, services might be in the cloud and some may be on-prem. So there are a lot of different areas that we need to make certain that we understand where the traffic is coming from and how we support those devices that are accessing the network. So again, as we mentioned, with all these additional devices that are accessing the network, there's more risk for cyber attacks. How confident are you that you've got the right network infrastructure in place to support those devices, not only from the edge of the network, but again, to the core of the network? So as we talk about the automated campus, we can start to look at the network provisioning at the edge of the network also needs to maintain the security all the way back to the core of the network infrastructure, or automated campus. So the idea is to be able to auto-provision these devices at the edge of the network and also have the network auto-provision itself at the core to support some of these features. And it needs to be done securely. We're looking at doing it through hyper-segmentation, so we can avoid other devices seeing or talking to any device that's accessed the network. Again, with automated campus, we have the ability to create policies and roles of devices that are accessing the network. And we're making certain that it's secure all the way through to the core of the network. If we look at a specific vertical, and I spend a lot of time in healthcare, we have a large healthcare facility in Detroit here that I've worked quite extensively with wireless initiatives and wired initiatives. Many devices that they support in a hospital environment. MRI machines, cameras, pain pumps, all these devices can be connected to the network either wired or wirelessly, but one thing is for certain, they need to be connected securely. And in many cases, for example, the MRI machines, I was just speaking with one of our IT folks in healthcare, and they were explaining to me that their MRI machines are actually connected to workstations that have Windows XP associated with those workstations, connected with a gigabit connection into a network infrastructure. So how secure is that device that's accessing the network? It's not a mobile device, I'll grant you that, but there may not be more than one or two in a major hospital facility, but they might have 5 or 6 or 10 of these locations where they might have 4 or 5 of these devices actually connected to the network. Or look at an Alaris pain pump that might have an Ethernet connection into it that might be in one room today or in this minute, and then the next hour, they might wheel it into another room and plug it into another Ethernet interface port. Again, how secure is that port that it's connected to? It's mobile. How do we identify the device? How do we sort of make certain that that device is secured to the network? So there's a lot of things we look at from just this one vertical alone that presents a lot of pain points to our customers. So we have a very good solution that we typically refer to as a Defender. So in our solution, you can look at the graphic and you'll see where there might be a video surveillance camera, an imaging system, and a financial transaction device, a credit card machine, for example, that might have entry points into the network. And through the little box that it's connected to, we can make certain that that device not only is associated to the network securely, but it's also associating itself via hypersegmentation back to a core infrastructure where we then can identify that device and auto-provision that device on the network. So by auto-provisioning it, we can make it certain it's secure from the edge all the way back to the core. It does a lot in the way of being able to reduce the amount of time it takes to configure networks, infrastructures, to support whatever feature that you're trying to bring onto the network. So the value approach that we look at is 3 things. It needs to be simple, it needs to be secure, and it needs to be intelligent. And through our automated edge or automated network services, we can ascertain the device that's being connected to that physical port, whether it's an access point, whether it's a camera, whether it's a phone, whatever that device is, we have to make certain from the edge of the network that we're providing that secure access to the network. As we see 75 to 80% of the traffic starting at the edge of the network, it's imperative and important that we sort of do something with that at the edge of the network. In other words, we don't want to have that traffic come back to a core where we have a layer 3 switch where we might have to put an access control list in place, or maybe then allow a firewall to deny or drop the traffic. From our solution, we can provide that authentication and security and roles and rule-based process right at the edge of the network where it starts. If that device doesn't belong in the network, we can drop it from the network. If it does belong in the network, we can specify what type of roles or rules are associated with that particular device. So as we start to look at how we secure that device, when it gets access to the network, we do provide that device a specific policy. What TCP ports, what UDP ports that it can speak with, what other IP addresses can talk to it, what IP addresses can it talk to, how much bandwidth do we want that traffic to have. Maybe we want to put a prioritization level on that. Maybe it's traffic that needs to have a higher level of prioritization so that it's constantly making certain that it gets to its destination with the highest level of importance. And then more importantly, if we look at the intelligence side of it, it's one thing to allow access to the network of these specific devices, but we also have to know what's on the device, on the network. How do we identify what devices are on the network, how many devices are on the network, how much bandwidth are these devices occupying, are they coming on the Ethernet side, are they coming on the wireless side? How do we associate policy with those devices? And by the way, those policies should be simple in that one policy that I leverage should be used for the wired or the wireless device. It shouldn't make any difference. And by having a single pane of glass, which we call Extreme Management Center, it gives us the ability to identify, locate, manage, monitor, and support all these devices on the network, while also giving us the ability to look at all the applications that are associated with that device. So it becomes extremely critical when we start to look at the network is running slow. How often do we hear the network is running slow? In many cases, we start to look at certain parts of the network. We have maybe a wireless team looking at some devices, a wired team looking at other devices, the firewall people looking at other devices. If we have that single pane of glass manageability, we have a great starting point to at least identify who's the network, how they're connected to the network, what type of devices they are, where they're physically connected at, and all the applications that they may be leveraging as well. So again, the Extreme Smart Omni-Edge solution, it gives us the ability to automatically identify and detect devices that are accessing the network and providing some sort of automated provisioning solution for it. The Extreme Automated Campus is how we provide that access back to the core of the network by maintaining the policy from the edge of the network all the way back to the core of the network. By being able to do some of these automated features, then we also obviously reduce the amount of time it takes to provision these devices to get access to the network. So if we look at from a network manager's relevant insight, we can sort of look at, and this is very, very important to note. The statement from Gartner basically states the network is a slow-moving part of the infrastructure, and in an era when digital business mandates faster reaction times, it's not kept pace. I can tell you from the standpoint of this local healthcare facility that we support, it takes weeks, sometimes months, to get access to a 24/7 network that might need a core change, maybe adding a VLAN or adding a device to the network that requires configuration of the edge of the network as well as the core of the network. It might also involve the wireless team, the wired team, the server team, the firewall team to make those changes as well. And again, if it's CLI approached, you have to make those physical changes to each switch in a non-intelligent environment. And of course, there's always that risk of fat fingering something and not doing something correctly and causing another potential problem in the network that revolves around you trying to isolate, identifying where those potential problems can lie. The other thing we discussed is that there's just so many different tools in the network. So if you're working with a Cisco infrastructure, you might have a Cisco application to manage that device. If you have a Aruba, a wireless infrastructure, you might have ClearPass or a wireless management tool. If you're using ClearPass from a NAC perspective to authenticate device on the wireless side, you might have another wired solution to support how you authenticate wired devices on the network. And again, if you're trying to look at the analytics approach from a layer 7 perspective with a solution that encompasses multiple tools, you're now looking at firewalls for layer 7 visibility. You might be looking at your switching platforms to look at analytics. With our solution, which we call XMC or Extreme Management Center, we now have the ability to have a single database that can identify all those devices accessing the network, looking at where they're physically connected at. And also, the more important part, we can look at application response time and network latency associated with those wired or wireless devices connected to the network. So again, when somebody says the network is running slow, you can actually take a look at our analytics tool, and we can actually take a look at bandwidth occupied by specific devices, a group of devices, a location. So when we start to see maybe an Alaris pain pump might not be responding to the network very quickly, or some other device that's associated with the network is responding slowly, we can at least look at, is it a problem with the network latency? In other words, is it taking 6 or 7 seconds for a response to come back from the device that's making the request? Or is it an application response time issue? So if it's an application response time issue, at least you don't have to look at the network or point your finger at the network. You might have to go back to the server team and say, I'm seeing a 6-second response time from this application that resides on your server. Maybe you've got to look at memory utilization or processor utilization or things of that nature. But from that single pane of glass manageability, we can look at all that and pull some very strategic information from that, at least to ascertain where to start looking for the problem. And as we know, it's typically not the network, but we always have to defend the network, as I always say. So network managers have 2 imperatives they need to act on: simplification and automation. So again, the automated campus, the value proposition to network managers, because the auto provisioning by nature from the edge of the network to the core of the network, we could reduce provisioning to 50 to 60%, not needing to have to touch the core. If we can provision the edge of the network, we can dynamically have the network provision itself all the way through the core of the network, which should allow applications to be deployed 31 times faster. Again, I can tell you from this hospital that we support, it takes 4 to 6 weeks to get a change for them to upgrade a wireless controller. It takes a month to bring up a new application because You have to define the parameters of what needs to change in the network. In many cases, it's touching multiple people. The wireless team might have to change the port that's connected to the switch that the wired team needs to support. So they have to make a change on the wired side because the wireless people don't talk to the data people. And again, if there's something from the firewall perspective, there's a whole different team that needs to support that aspect. So if we can make the network infrastructure more adaptable and auto provision, we don't have to do very much with the core. It just sort of provisions itself and eliminates the need to make any physical changes to the core of the network. We have a specific automotive customer that manufactures vehicles, and they use Ethernet-based torque bits, Ethernet-based tools to build cars. And in many cases, in the past, if they had to move a line and move an Ethernet port, they had to physically make a manual change to a switch, isolating the specific VLAN that it might be associated with. But with our automated campus and our smart OmniEdge solution, it doesn't matter what device you plug in, where you plug it in at, it provisions itself at the edge of the network, and it builds the configuration all the way to the core of the network infrastructure. Nobody knows that a change was made at the core. It just happens dynamically. And again, if we can look at the single pane of glass management from our tools, it makes things much easier to identify where problems exist, how to address those problems, or even where to start looking at problems. So three very simple things I think it might be important to take away. The solution is fully automated. Again, we don't have to provision the entire network infrastructure to support all the billions of devices that we'll be supporting the network. How nice would it be if we know the device plugs into the network infrastructure, we can identify that device, provision the device, give it a set of rules and roles to support that device and support that infrastructure all the way through to the core, maintain the security back to the core of the infrastructure. And again, the hands-off approach to the core, there's no maintenance downtime windows. If we make changes on the network, we add specific devices to the edge of the network, we don't have to make these changes for the network. Again, we can make sure that it's secure. That connection at the edge of the network is secure back to the core. More importantly, this is not a rip and replace opportunity. This will work with existing infrastructure by placing some strategic components and software in strategic places. We don't have to rip or replace anything. If you already have an extreme infrastructure, it makes it that much easier for us to adapt our solutions into your.
All right, thank you so much, Tom.
Thank you.
Let's kind of see some of these questions that came in. So looks like somebody said, do I need to replace anything on my network to leverage your solutions?
No, that's the beautiful part. The whole idea of the Defender solution that we talked about, it works in conjunction with third-party products. So that little adapter piece is what we would typically put at the edge of the network. And there's some component of software that would ride someplace in the cloud or in the core of the network infrastructure that would allow that device to be securely associated with the network infrastructure and also give it that policy and provisioning dynamically.
Okay, thank you for that. Let's see another question that came in. Somebody said, our company is in the retail space. Are there other, brand company names that you could share who use your technology?
Oh, yes. Kroger is a large proponent of Extreme technology with all the wireless technology. Meyer is a big wireless provider in the retail space. We have UPS, FedEx. Some of these organizations have 70 to 100,000 different wireless devices on their network today.
Okay, awesome. And all right, let's see. I guess this is the final one then. Somebody asked, can or how does your system integrate with other third-party systems?
So again, the approach from the Defender standpoint, we have that particular hardware component that would allow you to plug into anybody's network infrastructure. That in conjunction with our software, our XMC management software that we talked about, would allow us to provide that secure access to anybody's network infrastructure.
Perfect. Thank you very much. So now I am going to announce the winner of the $25 Visa gift card, and that is going to go to Robert Urban. Robert, you will receive an e-card from Amazon directly. And I'll follow up with you as well there via your email address. Thank you so much, everybody, for joining us today. We had a great turnout. Please reach out via phone if you have any questions, 844-215-3050, or just go ahead and email me directly at lmalia@barcodesinc.com. Thank you so much again, everybody.
Thank you. Have a great day.